Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a Lunch and Learn session as we take this opportunity to learn about all the important resources that are available to you as a member of the Down Syndrome Association. Today's session is focused on the Center for Hearing and Speech, presented by Cathy Brown, Executive Director.
Happy to be here. Thank you to the Down Syndrome Association of Greater St. Louis for having us to talk about some of the services that we provide. My name is Cathy Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Hearing and Speech, powered by Easter Seals. That's new for us. So as of May 1st, we have officially merged with Easter Seals. And so I'm excited to share about our programs and services and the larger organization and everything that they have to offer in this region and beyond. I have spent the last 20 years of my career working in supports and services for people with disabilities and also policy and advocacy for individuals with disabilities in various organizations, and have been at the Center for Hearing and Speech for just almost 4 years now in the capacity of executive director, and fell in love with their mission, which I will tell you much more about. And thank you for having me. I have with me Dr. Kate Sinks, who is our Director of Speech and Hearing Services, because if there are any questions of a clinical nature, I am wildly unqualified to pretend to answer those. So want to make sure that we give you access to the expertise that we have available here via Kate. Center for Hearing and Speech, founded in 1920, originally as the League for the Hard of Hearing. And as the League for the Hard of Hearing, we provided a variety of services to individuals with hearing loss in the community, a lot of social activities and supports. And we have grown to be an organization that provides clinical services and touches the lives of more than 30,000 people in the greater St. Louis area and beyond. We have so many, if you ever come to the Center for Hearing and Speech for any kind of services, we have so many really cool artifacts from, the history of these services, including signed photos from Helen Keller and, really old hearing aids and audiometers and all of those kinds of things. I love to show people that. And I think it just really reminds us of our rich history, filling this gap in terms of communication services for St. Louis, and doing that for a very, very long time and doing it very well. So that is a little bit about the Center for Hearing and Speech and our services. So like I said, or like was on this slide, our mission is to transform lives by empowering communication. So this slide is really like what we do. And the rest of what I'm going to tell you is like how we do it, right? The services that we provide. But what we do is, for example, help moms like Jessica hear their children for the first time. Actually, Kate can probably tell this story better than I can, but Kate was working with Jessica's daughter, who also has hearing loss. And Jessica had a cochlear implant that she was not really using. And so I was talking to Kate, and Kate, do you want to jump in? And I'm going to butcher this story. It's so good.
So I met Jessica and her family through a partnership we have with St. Joseph's Hearing and Speech, and working with her daughter. And Jessica was like, hey, look, I have this implant. I got it when I was a kid, but I haven't been using it because she communicates primarily through lip reading and sign language. Her husband is also deaf, and so she never really just had any motivation to get her CI working again after the parts kind of broke down when she was a teenager. And but as her kids, as she had her kids and they started to grow and they started to talk, she's got 2 children, one who does have hearing loss in one ear, and her other child has healthy hearing in both ears. And so they were learning to speak and communicating with the family, and both kids have learned a little bit of sign, but are primarily use oral communication. So she's like, what would it take to get my implant working again? I said, let's look into it. It took a lot of work with insurance companies and things like that, but we actually were able to get her. So a little side note: the internal device that she has is no longer compatible with the latest generations of external processors, and she does not want to have a surgery to get that redone. So we had to go back and we had to find an older processor for her to use. And we were very lucky through my contacts to get her one that's compatible. And the day we turned it on, tears everywhere. She was like, "Oh my God, they're noisy. Are kids noisy?" I'm like, "Kids are noisy, yes." So it took her a little bit of time to just get used to hearing sound again. But she said, the first time she heard her kids' voices was very, very special to her. So, and now everybody's doing great.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate you fleshing that out. I think that you tell that story so beautifully. And I think that, when people hear about the services that we provide, that's really the impact, right? People being able to connect with the world around them, people being able to communicate their wants and needs, and to be able to hear other people do the same. And I think it's really important. The second story that is shared here is about a young man named Jack, an entrepreneur who has his own granola business. If you like granola or you like snacks, then I'm just going to tell you, you got to check out Jack's granola because it's really, really very good. And he was having some issues with communicating with his customers. So when he was at farmers markets and other sales opportunities, he had some functional language needs, some pragmatic language needs. And so speech therapy isn't always just about, articulation and how you pronounce words. The world of speech and language encompasses so many different things that our SLPs are equipped to help people with. So we were supporting Jack with some functional and pragmatic work in order to better communicate with his customers, grow his business, be a better professional. And I love that story. And not just because they dropped off free granola. So those are the kind of impacts that, we have in people, assisting them to connect with the world around them. And now I'll move on to the services that we provide. So there are 4 main buckets of services that we provide here at the Center for Hearing and Speech: audiology, speech language services, school screening, and hearing conservation. So, we sort of do it all, from early identification to prevention to treatment and to ongoing support. So no matter where you are in your journey or what your needs are, the orientation of the providers that work for us is, we're going to meet you where you are and give you just what you need in order to be successful, however you define that. In audiology, we have 3 locations. Here on Manchester, across from Hacienda and Rock Hill, is our main clinic location. Our speech language, and we also serve people at Mercy Jefferson, Festus, and Affinia in the city of St. Louis. Speech language services are also provided at our Manchester location, but we also have partner sites that we travel to in order to make sure that there are kiddos and students particularly that are able to access speech language services that otherwise wouldn't be able to. We screen more than 10,000 school-aged children for vision or hearing loss that might otherwise be unidentified if they didn't get that screening in the school setting. And our hearing conservation program is a program that screens the hearing of workers who work in high noise environments. So OSHA requires an annual hearing test for certain categories of employee depending on their noise exposure and environment. So we have 3 mobile units that can test between 6 and 8 people at a time. And we have done that last year, we went to 11 different states providing those screenings. And I did see a question pop up, but it went away. Can you tell me what it was?
Yeah. So Faith asked if you service both Missouri and Illinois.
We do, yes. We have people that come to us from Illinois, and there are a variety of counties on the Illinois side that we consider kind of our reach. So we absolutely do, and we would, do our very best to provide services to folks in Illinois, as long as we could connect with them. We are an Illinois Medicaid provider, and so that is an opportunity for people. In audiology, we see more than 2,000 unique patients every year. That's a lot of patients. Some of those folks are previous patients as well. So we support people with their hearing health across the lifespan, and Kate can speak to this. Oftentimes, we have long-term patients that we see in our clinics, and they get to know their docs very well. Like I said, 3 locations: Percy Jefferson, Affinia, and here our Rock Hill, Manchester location. We have 3 full-time audiologists, and so often between 1 or 2 externs, which is an audiology student in their final year of schooling, getting some professional experience in a clinic. And this is 2024 calendar year data. So we fit 765 hearing aids. And what's special about us as a nonprofit clinic is that 429 of those were done with some form of financial assistance. So not only do we take most major insurance, including Medicaid, we also have financial assistance programs, because we do not want finances to be a barrier for anyone who needs access to our services. So we fundraise a tremendous amount to be able to offer those financial assistance programs in all of our services. And to the right, with this little cutie with the big headphones on, school screening, more than 10,000 children screened at 99 schools last year. 74 of those schools were screened at no cost. We have a sliding scale in that program based on percentage of free and reduced lunch. We know that it's really important that that early identification happens, because an unidentified hearing loss or vision issue can interfere with a student's ability to access curriculum. So we want those students to have no barriers between them and what they're supposed to be learning in class. We also screened 311 children at health fairs or other community events that we were invited to by partners of ours, which we always try to make work if we can. We're actually a relatively small team, so these numbers are pretty big, considering the folks that we have doing it all. In speech language services in 2024, we saw 342 clients. I didn't mention that in audiology, most of the people that we see are adults, and in speech language services, most of the people that we see are children. That's not to say that there aren't adults accessing speech language services, because there are, or there aren't children accessing our audiology services, because there are. But in the greater St. Louis area, there are actually a tremendous amount of resources for pediatric audiology. And so, oftentimes we'll connect them to someone that has a little bit of a greater expertise in that area. But Kate does, like she said, have a partnership with St. Joseph's Hearing and Speech, and so provides some audiology services to some of those kids. We do group and individual therapy provided in the center and at community partner sites and speech language services. And then hearing conservation, you'll see, when we say that we touch more than, 30,000 people a year, this is where most of them come from, hearing conservation. That's usually a one and done kind of experience, screening the hearing of those adults. In 2024, we did 382 companies across 9 states. I think I might have said 11, with 3 mobile testing units and 2 sets of portable equipment. And we provide a variety of other kind of related services in all of those programs, but that's kind of the higher level overview of those 4 different buckets of services. Any questions about any of those things? So I'm going to share some things with you that I know because I read them. And you all probably have far more expertise than I do related to the connection between Down syndrome and hearing loss and speech language services. But I thought it was worth, kind of putting up there because there are some different recommendations, particularly for young people that have a Down syndrome diagnosis related to their hearing screenings and speech language services. So there's a lot on this slide. I'm not going to necessarily read it to you, but I think you can have access to the recording, and certainly I will share the presentation with Linda, and she can do whatever she wants with it. But just kind of took in some information related to hearing loss and Down syndrome. So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group actually recommend testing at birth and then every 6 months up to age 3. After the age of 3, a hearing test annually. I think that there are statistics that individuals with Down syndrome have a higher likelihood of hearing loss. And then some other associated wax issues. And certainly, the earlier you start sensitizing a child to the experience of having a hearing test, having, people poking around in their ear, and, it's all kind of strange when, there's equipment around and people in white coats, then the more comfortable you can make it, and the more you can make that part of their, typical preventative and screening kind of routine with a medical provider. So just wanted to kind of share some of that information with all of you. And then related to speech language services, there's a high access for speech language services for individuals with Down syndrome, children with Down syndrome, but certainly adults. If they wanted to improve their communication, figure out some additional strategies, work on some of that pragmatic or functional language, that's something that they could utilize the services of a speech language pathologist for. Certainly, importance of early intervention, like it is with almost everything. Earlier is better. And then I think that, we talk about this a lot in speech language services. There's just, continuing research that shows this long-term benefit of having access to speech language services if you need them, both in terms of success in the workplace, in your interpersonal lives, your educational lives. I think that, it doesn't take a professional to understand that, a child who is confident raising their hand and answering a question in school might have an advantage to a child who doesn't feel like they want to talk or doesn't feel like they want to say, I don't understand, either because they're having difficulty communicating that, or they're worried about, the social nature of being in school, which is, will a kid make fun of me, or, will it be a complicated interaction? So speech language services can help with a variety of issues for kids and adults with Down syndrome. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, I mentioned that we have financial assistance available to us, and that we accept most major insurance, including Medicaid, including Illinois Medicaid. We do not want cost to be a barrier to accessing care. I do have a slide if anyone is really interested in some of the details that kind of show the different buckets of financial assistance and kind of what some of the criteria are. Over time, that will change because Missouri Medicaid previously only covered hearing aids and cochlear implants for individuals in certain benefit categories, or if they had a certain other qualifying diagnosis or event. So for example, if you were under 21, or if you were pregnant, living in a nursing facility, or you're blind, you could get a hearing aid or cochlear implant. But if you weren't any of those things, then it was not a covered service. And that is set to change in state fiscal year 27. So in about another year, They're supposed to be writing the rules on all that. And that was some legislation that both Kate and I were actively involved in getting passed and was signed by the governor just a month ago, 2 months ago, feels like yesterday. But it's very recent. And the reason that I loop back to that is, the center in 2005, when those optional services were cut from the Missouri Medicaid program, instituted a financial assistance program specifically for individuals who used Medicaid for their health insurance to make sure that nobody fell through the cracks when that coverage was not available. So if anybody wants me to, I can go all the way to the end of my slides and talk about the different kind of financial assistance. But if you call us or email us inquiring about an appointment, then there's also a wonderful woman named April who would be able to tell you all about financial assistance. And also on our website, there is a very comprehensive page that talks about all of the ways that we can help support access to our services, even through vocational rehabilitation, if someone is of that age, that would assist them in accessing educational curriculum or employment opportunities. That's something that we do as well. I said earlier that the Center for Hearing and Speech, powered by Easter Seals, is new for us as of May. So we have officially merged with Easter Seals Midwest. And so the big we provides many services. And I will just go through a few large buckets. The email or the website addresses for the organization will be included in the presentation so you can learn more. But we provide community living services, which are 24-hour supports and services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who have a Medicaid waiver that pays for those services for them. We do early childhood home visiting services. These are families that may have children with or without disabilities that might need some education and support and help navigating systems in order to set them up for success. Employment services for individuals with a variety of disabilities to help them either obtain, maintain, or skill build so that they can go out into the job market and advance their career. That includes kind of pre-employment services, right? The exploration, the getting ready, the figuring out like, what do I want to do and what do I need to do to be able to be successful in a chosen career path. They also provide services for people who don't currently have a vocational goal, but really need to have a valued day, right? Like they don't want to sit at home all the time. So that program is called Community Connections, and it allows people to do things like to volunteer, do recreational activities, just connect with other people, and like I said, have a valued day. Home health services are, I think, one of Easter Seal's newest services. This is, you can think of health home services. Home health is something totally different. It's all the same words. I don't know who names this stuff, but they didn't ask me, or I just said that doesn't make any sense. Health home services is more like medical case management. So anyone who is currently a Mo Health Net or Missouri Medicaid beneficiary is assigned a health home provider, and someone get in touch with them and kind of help them navigate their care, so to speak, help them interact with some of those resources available to them so that they can be healthy, get what they need, follow up, etc. And then Easter Seals also provides autism services. Those services, they're not, people with autism access a variety of these other services, but one of the most exciting things that they have brought on lately is Early Point, which is a system that helps diagnose autism even earlier than was previously thought possible. So there are a lot of exciting things happening in the world of autism treatment, services, and diagnosis. And I will say, we're proud to be part of Easter Seals because they have always been on the forefront in that world in the state of Missouri. Those are all of the services that we provide. I will go ahead and open it up to any questions. Like I said, Dr. Sinks is here and she would be more than happy to jump in if there were any kind of more like clinical questions, not organizational questions, that we could answer for you. I encourage you to check out our website, both Easter Seals and the center, and they kind of all connect to each other. So, or call for more information. And I thought I saw another question there. Was it about, do we have a wait list?
Yes.
It depends on the service. So I will say in our speech language department, we have a couple of vacancies, which has reduced the number of people that we can bring on board. And so I do believe that we have a wait list for services in speech language. Audiology, we do not. We can, now that doesn't mean like we have appointment tomorrow, but we can definitely schedule audiology services now. Speech language is a little bit harder. If you happen to know any speech language pathologists, like there's one down the street or your cousin's sister's girlfriend's babysitter or anybody, please let them know. We're a great place to work and we are absolutely mission driven. And, you know, for people who have a heart for getting these services to the people who need them most, this is really a place for them. And so, you know, we would love to have more SLPs so that we don't have to put people on a waiting list. We never want to say no, but sometimes we do have to say in speech language services, not right now.
In terms of the audiology component, individuals with Down syndrome have a greater risk factor for developing hearing loss. A lot of times because of the cranial structure and the propensity for middle ear disease. They're at greater risk for developing ear infections, and that can often lead to what we call conductive or mixed hearing loss. Sometimes there can be an additional with the 21 gene, there can be a propensity for some sensory neural components as well. So that's why it's really important to monitor their hearing probably a little bit more aggressively than a typical developing child or individual. You know, in terms of like how we treat the loss, we're not going to treat the loss any different per se. We do recommend that they have an ear, nose, and throat physician that, you know, is probably in their back pocket. So if there does need to be some medical management, that they have a resource that they can access readily. And we have, you know, a list of ENTs that we work with all the time, and we give those out to families and things like that. But
hey, Kate, can you speak to testing folks that might have, you know, limited expressive language capacity, or people that might have some anxiety around doctor stuff, and how you guys manage that? Because Kate's team is really amazing at not saying, no, we can't do it. I mean, they figure out a way, wouldn't you say, Kate?
So a lot of times if I have somebody who maybe can't do traditional behavioral testing, maybe they do have a language component where we can't test their word understanding ability by having them like repeat a word or something like that. We have point to picture testing that we do with them. We can, instead of like having them click a button or raise their hand when they hear a sound, we can condition them to toss a toy into a bucket, do gaze testing with video reinforcing screens. A lot of times we'll have two testers in the booth, two testers doing the evaluation. So one in the booth kind of coaching that individual on how to provide some responses, and the other person doing the actual measurement component. And then if we do have somebody who just is not capable of doing the behavioral testing, we have a way of, it's called ABR, stands for Auditory Brainstem Response, which is a big, fancy, kind of scary word, but we're basically measuring brainwave responses to sound. And we can do this type of testing here in the office without having to sedate the person or anything like that, as long as they can remain somewhat still and quiet. We can do the testing right here in the office, and it provides us more information about what their actual neural responses to sound are, and then we can use that to estimate what a behavioral test would show us. Yeah, I mean, so the Bluetooth, earpieces, headphones, they're not inherently evil. They're not designed to damage people, but they get very easily abused, right? So if I have parents of young kids, I always recommend they have devices with output limitations built into them, so they cannot exceed a certain volume limit. If you have an adolescent or an adult, it's really just about coaching, saying, hey, if you are going to be wearing these headphones, maybe they have to wear them for school for map testing, or maybe they're wearing them because they have sensory issues, right? And they need that to feel a little bit more secure. That's perfectly fine. You just need to coach them in terms of making sure that those volume levels don't exceed a certain point based on the number of hours they're wearing it. And that's really just about counseling. So we can, for our patients here, we can clean their ears. We use suction equipment. We also have, it depends on the provider. Some use the suction, some use like the little curettes. Individuals with Down syndrome tend to have very, very small ear canals, also quite curvy sometimes. So it can be a little bit more of a challenge, especially to try and do something like that at home. Q-tips do not belong in your ears. I'm going to say it again. Q-tips do not belong in your ears. You can detail your car with them, but not your ears. So there are safe ways to clean your ears at home, though. And we have a little sheet that we often give families. The best thing to use, hydrogen peroxide in the brown bottle. Now, I will say a slight caveat to that. If the individual has tubes in their ears, which some people do, especially individuals with Down syndrome, because of that chronic ear infection, no liquid in the ears. It can get past that tube and be extremely painful. In that case, you would really just want to go to a professional and have them do it.
I just want to say a very big thank you to Cathy and Kate for sharing your expertise with us today.